religious to now sort of after doing I was doing a
check.
lot of like 12-step work and sobriety stuff. I've sort of developed.
Sorry, then I asked
Oh
you
no,
earlier.
it's all good. I appreciate the offer. It's very nice.
Chickadee,
But it's all
chick,
stuff
chick.
that's now like I have my own version of what spirituality works for, or of what it looks like and what works for me specifically. And I like that better. I don't feel like I do feel like there's a lot of problems in specific religions, but I've got no problem with like the idea of God and something higher.
Entity.
Yes, exactly. I yeah. Of course, yeah. First one, you're right. I think of God as basically just like it's a shorthand for like whatever the universe is that we can't, all the unexplained shit, right? Yeah. I love. You ever heard of The Artist's Way? Okay, so I read that. I've got a couple copies of it over there. Artist's Way is this book that it ties in a lot of. It's very heavily tied in with like 12-step related spirituality stuff, but also it's specifically for you can adopt some of the stuff that it talks about for any creative output. Yeah. And one of the things it says in there is if you have a problem looking at God, just think about God as the idea of like if you feel drawn to a path, then you following God is you following that path. That's good, orderly direction. So like if things feel in your world like they're in the right place and you're moving in the right spot in the right direction, then that just means you're in connection with the higher power that you have in your life.
I actually know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
And the reason I asked you that, because coming in here and like I saw you, we met at Danny Frank has a show and it's called
The Laugh-In.
Laugh Out.
Yeah.
And yes, I like songs. So we met there, and I remember just being like, "Oh man, he's really funny, good technique." Like the comedy shit that you go through when you see someone.
Yeah.
And then talking with you, you weren't a complete asshole, which was really nice.
Thank you.
and then I obviously don't know anything about you, and that's why we're doing this.
Right.
And to promote the show. Right?
Of course.
Coming in here, I was coming in here, I was like, "Fuck, this person is reasonable." Like. Like someone's space, what it says about them. Your space says like organized, thoughtful, intelligent.
Yeah.
And I just that's what made me immediately think like, was your childhood really good or something? Where did you get this organization from?
I wouldn't attribute that to my childhood necessarily. I feel like that's all like recent developments where I'm like I appreciate things sort of with an order to them, and this. Oh, hold on. Let me grab mine actually before I pop my headphones on. Now that I think about it, I think I have always approached comedy from a sort of analytical space.
Oh, good. I'm excited to hear about this. That's not sarcasm. I know it just sounded like
but
it.
Yeah, so I have this whole like. I've got all of my notebooks that I've ever used still, and I have all these things in mind that are like, I keep a very specific, organized method of taking notes, and the way that I develop materials have become a very specific method over time. But I also, as you can see, I like order and cleanliness.
Yeah, I'm seeing. Do you want to get this started?
Yeah, I'll just roll this right in. We can continue this conversation anyway, because I sound like I'm in a fish tank, and I don't know how to fix that.
Oh shit, huh? Yeah.
Whatever. I'll fix it in post.
Are we recording right now?
Yes, we
are. Let's see. That was the other thing. So coming in here, I was immediately for whoever's listening.
Well, let's roll into this. You don't have to do your spiel.
Yeah.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the Buddy Cast. Sitting next to me is my good friend, my co-host, Mr. Don Father himself, Mr. Aaron Chase. Say hi to the folks.
Hi, folks.
And then our guest, a very special guest today. I've actually been excited for this podcast. Mr. Jay Light here hosting us today on this fine afternoon. Thank you for having us here.
Gloomy MLK Day. It's so weird and gray outside.
Yeah,
but I don't mind it so much.
Me either. There was minimal traffic, so it's great.
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't know you were in the heart of Los Angeles County. Mm-hmm. So shit could have been crazy, but we appreciate having you here. And I was excited for this podcast because in the comedy cosmos of this world, you've always been like I would say like a comet. in my orbit kind of thing. Like you'd pop up here and there. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Oh, that's cool. Oh, that's really cool. But like we've never been in like the same sort of, I guess, quote unquote circuit. You know, you've kind of been other places. I've met you previously and like secondhandedly. I think for my timeline, the first time I heard about you was when you were at Flappers in Claremont.
Oh, a long time ago.
Yeah,
Oh
long
my
time
God.
ago. So I don't know. Were you hosting there? Or?
Yeah, so that must have been, that would have been probably about 5 years ago now. So at the time, I worked at the Flappers in Burbank as a door guy and eventually box office manager, because it doesn't take a whole lot to get promoted if you're just like halfway decent at a job
if you're there.
And I, as part of that, they eventually were like, hey, we want you to start hosting the open mic on Sundays in Claremont. And I was like, cool, sounds good. So I did that for like 6 months. And I hosted the open mic every week. They gave me a spot beforehand on whatever the show was. Usually it was a showcase. Occasionally got to open for people. Like I got to open for Dana Carvey a number of times because of that. And then right around the time I stopped hosting I was just getting started working at the Comedy Store too.
Okay.
I don't know how much correlation there is between those two things. I don't think that there's much. From what I remember, there was a lot of miscommunication going on between me and the people who were booking me for those open mic hosting spots at the time, and that's what led to things sort of falling. But me not hosting anymore and that sort of arrangement falling apart.
Right.
But it was a good little fun time. I enjoyed being out there.
Yeah, I heard a lot of people because that you doing Flappers kind of marks the first time that I quit comedy.
Oh yeah, you had a couple runs at it.
Well, I stopped doing it. Basically, it sounded like right when you got there, and then right at the end of your little tenure was when I started coming back. But everyone who stayed seemed very excited and very upset that you left because they said it was a good time again. Like it was, Flappers has had a few classes and ups and downs and stuff, but when you were there, it sounded like a very positive experience. I was like, "Fuck! Now I'm just gonna, I missed it. Now we get just shitty now. All right."
Well,
so
I would have stayed if they'd let me. That's all I'll say.
That's fair. They don't exist anymore in Claremont.
True.
So,
Just
maybe
an empty room in the packing house now.
Yeah, I don't know. That seemed like that place is just starved for entertainment. In that area, that seemed like a great missed opportunity, I guess.
It's a cool little room too. I really dug. I always like a good small comedy room, but Flappers Claremont was a particularly like interesting, well laid out room.
Did you ever go back like after you?
No.
You're like, fuck that.
Never been back. I have, and now I don't have to go back. Nowhere to go back to. It doesn't exist.
So when that was 5 years ago. How long have you been at comedy now? Like total, I guess then.
A little more than 9 years.
9 years.
Yeah. So I started comedy in North Carolina when I was in college. The first time I ever got on stage, I was 18. The first 2 years after that, I don't really count in my like time because I was super nervous still and not doing a whole lot of shows as a factor, or as a product of that rather. And once I got a car, I was 20. I could leave campus and start doing open mics. I went to college in this place called Elon, which is a little sort of middle of nowhere liberal arts school. And I was close enough to a couple cities that had comedy clubs or scenes at least, so I could go do open mic or whatever every week or every couple weeks. And then I moved to LA right after I graduated in 2012. So I've been here in LA just a little bit more than 7 years now.
That kind of led me into my question about, I know we're in your space right now. How do you do it? Financially speaking, how the fuck?
How do you live so close to the mecca of so many of entertainment in general?
I mean, it took a while. When I first moved to LA, I was living in East Hollywood. I was right off the 101. Was living in a condemned house with 6 other people.
Okay, so that's what we were joking about on the way here. We just got past that point.
Nah,
then.
You're seeing me like mid glow up.
Good,
this is all good things happening. So
good.
I lived there. I was working at Flappers a little bit, and I was working a handful of other jobs. I was doing like Postmates driving and freelance writing for various things. I did a whole bunch of. I had so many Craigslist jobs. I was like teaching swimming lessons and writing essays for college kids who didn't want to write them themselves, and I wrote for a startup for a little while that went under and never paid me for the last 3 months of work I did for them.
Rude.
Yeah, well, fuck
rude.
startups. Fuck Silicon Valley. They're terrible.
I mean, yeah, I've heard more bad stories than good stories about the Silicon Valley startups. It's like, I don't know, a lot of old money.
Well, it's a lot, not even just a lot of old people who are like using that money to make bad decisions with the way that they're like employing people. But that's a whole other podcast. I got in, but yeah, so then I started working at the Comedy Store, and I started working there right when it got super popular again. And now in this new golden age that the Comedy Store is at, I was there at the very beginning of it. It was very lucky to be there at the right time.
That's dope.
Yeah.
That's dope.
And then I was also there at the very beginning of Roast Battle. So I owe a lot of my financial success anyway to helping be a part of Roast Battle and helping run that show and getting involved in some of the early seasons of that. Last year, 2 years ago, technically, I guess, I started getting writing jobs, and I was still working at the Comedy Store. Like, at that point, after about a year or two of working at the store was busy again, and I was making enough money working there that I didn't have to work any other day jobs, which was cool.
That's dope.
So I could just focus on doing that and then doing stand-up at night, on nights that I had off. But then started getting writing jobs and doing those in between working at the store, and then last year I made the full jump to just doing writing and performing full-time. So last February, I quit working at the store, and now I have this.
That's dope.
What was that like? I have so many questions, man. I guess first, what was driving you when you first decided to make that jump? Like, how'd you keep the gas going? You know what I mean?
As far as picking up jobs and continuing with that?
Yeah, just not giving up and not being like, fuck this. What headspace were you in?
Well, I mean, I was really nervous to quit because the store was the only place that I'd worked at for, I think, longer than maybe 2 years, my entire life. And so it was very hard for me to leave there. And, of course, you get caught up in your head about, like, well, if I leave, are people going to forget me? Am I going to get spots there still? And it's just, all this stuff comes up in your head when you're working the door there. And I talked to other friends of mine who were former door guys, and I led them. I just ran my situation by them. And they were all saying, yeah, you should quit. This is you've clearly gotten to the point where it makes sense for you to quit. And I was feeling that, but it was nice to have somebody else tell me that too.
Right.
And then ever since that point happened, I've never felt like it would make sense for me to go back as far as being a door guy there again. But I also I've been opened up now to doing so many more things comedically because I don't have to put every single night of my free time into being at the Comedy Store. And that is the most freeing thing. That's so nice because now I can go, I don't have to worry about, like, I have a night shift coming up. I have to miss doing these shows, or I can't do these open mics, or I can't at least try and hang out at these other places that I don't hang out at. Now I have the freedom to do whatever I want. And there's still a degree of, like, okay, sometimes I'm still not going to be able to get things, and now I still have to grind, and I still have to ask for things, and I still have to seek out various jobs and stuff. But I don't feel the sense of, like, oh, I'm only at this place the way I did when I was still working at the Comedy Store. So that's nice.
Yeah,
I feel a bit more like a hired gun, that's my favorite part about comedy, honestly, is the sort of running around and not knowing what exactly you're going to be doing next.
Yeah, you were saying earlier that you have an analytical view of comedy. What's your writing process? How do you come up with a joke?
So now I have a notebook that I always carry on me, a little pocket notebook. I tried doing the thing where it would, like, take notes on my phone, but I always forgot to actually write shit down. So I have something physically on me or nearby at all times that I can, if something comes to mind, I'll write it down immediately because otherwise I'll forget it.
Right. So it's like a book of all your premises.
Yeah.
Where do you keep it at night? I'm just kidding.
It's right over there on the desk.
Or it was.
Oh no! What happened, Jordan? What have you done? So I keep that on me, and I will take premises to open mics or shows, and I will take them as far as I can get them without having to physically write something down. So usually I'll have at least like a premise and then a potential punchline or two to throw out as soon as I have that premise come to mind, and I'll try that out. And maybe I can riff with it at a mic. Maybe I can come up with a couple tags or something. As soon as stuff starts to work a little bit more, then I'll take it and I'll sit down and I'll transcribe it. I record every set, and so I'll transcribe the exact words, and I have a whole separate file of all of those actual bits on an app I use called Evernote.
Same.
Evernote's great.
Evernote's the shit.
Evernote, I love Evernote so much. But I use that to have basically a running list of my premises with word for word what the actual joke is. And then I take them out, bring them out again at shows, keep tinkering with them. I listen back to my sets all the time for word changes or if a fun tag or something comes up. And that's basically it. It's a lot of riffing, then writing, then trying it out, then editing, and maybe some riffing. And it's very different from the way I used to do it. I used to sit down and write everything out from the very beginning and then just try and read it verbatim. I grew up doing speech and debate as a kid, so I thought that was the method that would work for me then, so that would work for me now. But all this time later,
right.
It works a little bit better to sort of do a hybrid.
So when you write, it's not like I'm going to talk about this subject. It's just whatever's coming in your head.
Yeah, I have like a subject. If I have like a premise in my notebook, say that I want to maybe try out, I will have that, and if I were to write it out, it would look like bullet points, right? So it's like I have this premise. I want to hit this thing, this thing, this thing, and then when I go back and take my notes on a set that I'm listening back to. If I'll say like the bit is the header of something, right, on the notes. So I'll do like the bit and then like, oh, okay, this is a punchline. This gets a bullet point of whatever the thing is. And then a bullet point and a bullet point of different things. And then I'll even subdo it for tags and stuff. So I feel like I operate better when I'm thinking about things conceptually now. And then I can dive deeper into them as I develop the bit a little bit more.
Before I ask another thing, George, did you have anything you wanted to say? Because I know I'll like this is what happens. I'll just keep going.
Well, no, I'm interested like how you've grown, I guess, since because you said the first 2 years you did comedy, you don't really count.
Right.
How frequently were you going up? Like, what was your schedule like when you first started doing
I mean,
those 2 years?
Those first 2 years from ages 18 to 20, I got up maybe 10 times.
Oh, okay.
Total. Yeah,
Okay.
and this was the saddest part for me is like the only regrets. I don't have a whole lot of regrets about my life and the way my comedy path has gone.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is a 9-bedroom apartment, so I imagine. Yeah.
But I have the only big regret is that I didn't do comedy more when I was that age. I was in New York for a summer when I was 19. I was interning out there, and I did one bringer show at Gotham, and that was it. That was the only comedy I did the whole summer. I knew where open mics were. I looked up Bad Slava. I looked up the places that were close to me, and I was just too fucking scared to go do anything. Yeah. And it was
do comics still use Bad Slavas? Is that a thing? Because I feel like everyone's trying to do their own like app
everyone's got their own thing now. Yeah, everybody's.
That's an old poll. That's like going on your Zanga in fucking 2001 or something.
Yeah, wow. I mean, you could probably look up some. I probably have an old video posted on my Zanga somewhere. If you want to check out.
I think Bad Slava is how I discovered the Hideaway back in the day.
I don't know what we're talking about.
It's just back in the day, what, 5, 6, 7 years ago, everyone was on one. It was just a database.
A calendar. It looked very Craigslisty.
Yeah.
Okay. And they had not just comedy open mics; they had music open mics.
Yeah. So shit got confusing sometimes.
Yeah. But that was the thing. Like I mean, even growing out and starting doing stand up in a place that's not a big city or I didn't have a lot of access to doing a ton of open mics. But the places I would do them, you could at least get like at least 5, sometimes up to 7 or 10 minutes if you're doing a set. Like there was a place I would do regularly at my college.
Ooh.
That was an open mic run by. We had these things on our campus that were essentially, they called them learning communities, but they were basically just like groups of different, like people of different majors could live in a certain dorm or like an off-campus house that was owned by the school. And so I was hanging out with the English majors a lot, and they had a separate, they called it the Arts and Letters Learning Community, and they did an open mic once a month where it was mostly like people doing really shitty acoustic covers of songs or people reading poems. And then I would always do stand-up there. And I was just like the breath of fresh air doing jokes. And people were like, oh, yes, this is great. And
just crushing it
and
at the talent show.
Yeah, they let me do like 10, 12 minutes. And that was the other thing, too. Like, I was able to get a lot of stage time basically by tricking people, as you kind of do when you're early on. And you're like, yeah, I can totally do
We're
this thing.
still tricking people.
Yeah, that's all.
You let us into your place.
There's a lot of comedy that you're going to be tricking people your whole career, guys. That's what you do. I had I convinced my college to let me headline twice when I definitely did not have a full proper 45 minutes of material.
How'd it go?
Bad. It was very bad.
Well, how long was your headlining set?
I did the full 45.
Oh, okay.
I did my time.
That's like a man.
Yeah.
All right.
The first time.
A lot of, what classes are you taking?
Yeah, a lot of that. There was parts when I was reading directly out of my notebook for things because I was like, it was like.
Oh no.
And this is 2 years in?
Maybe.
It's giving me anxiety.
Maybe
bro.
less than 2 years. Maybe like a year and a half.
Wow.
Yeah, but I got paid. I got paid $100
Balls on this
both
kid.
times,
Nice.
and I got free pizza.
Oh,
It
dope.
was pretty good.
Worth it.
Yeah.
Worth the silence, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So when it comes to so when the people that listen to this, or there's a lot of newer comics that listen. So when it comes to writing, if you could give advice to someone who's maybe a year into writing, what would you?
Yeah, what would you give your year in advice
Ooh,
for
yeah.
yourself?
I would say write every day. Writing every day, even if it doesn't wind up generating anything, that's the most important thing you can do, because then at least you're building the habit of doing it. And another thing, and this is still something that I find myself having to do a little bit now, but definitely would have told myself to do it early on, is don't throw away material once you think it's done. If there's some more that you can develop and there's another angle that you can take with it or something that you can go deeper into a joke, then attempt to do that at the very least. I had this tendency of developing material, and I would like get it to a point where I was like, it would consistently hit, and then I would just kind of be like, okay, cool, and I would just sort of put it away, and I'd maybe do it again, maybe not. And so then after I recorded my album, when I was going through and getting rid of all the material that I recorded, I was finding all of this stuff that I was like, oh, I forgot I used to do that bit. Oh, that's a good bit. I forgot about that thing. And some of that stuff still works, and I've developed it further since finding it out again. But there's a lot of that stuff that's like garbage because I tried it a couple times, and it was working at the time because I was a very different person when I wrote it, but then I never took the time to actually develop it further. I think writing every day and then taking the time to actually develop things are very, very crucial things for young comics to do.
Okay.
What was that turning point for you then? So like your first 2 years didn't count. That next year, like what clicked in your head where you're like, oh, I have to do this more, or I have to actually write every day? Or
it's funny. I had so the third year, so having a car, and I was like, I can go do stuff outside of my college campus, and I can perform more regularly than like once a month. That was a big turning point for me. And then between my junior and senior year of college, I had an internship at the Cannes Film Festival in France, and the word got out, probably because I was like drunkenly telling people about it. Word got out that I was a stand-up comic, and at the whole time people are like, "Oh, I want to see your jokes. Tell us a joke."
In France,
because it's all Americans who I was hanging out with. I was interning with an American program, so it was all different college students. And the whole time I was like, "No, I'm not gonna tell a joke." And then the literal last night of the festival, we had this end of internship party, and I was like, I got drunk enough where I was like very confident. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go tell some jokes. And so I started a set on the beach. And I did like 15 minutes.
On the beach?
On the beach. Because we were the place that we were interning, it was called the American Pavilion. So they have, at Cannes, they have this whole stretch of pavilions that are run by all the countries who are trying to get you to come make your films there.
Right.
They're showing like tax incentives and stuff. America doesn't need to do any of that, so they just had like a Wi-Fi hotspot and they served food and coffee. And we were set up literally right next to a beach, so it was super cool. But I was like, I'm going to go and tell jokes on the beach. And I started doing a set, and then originally it was only to like the 6 or 7 people who I was hanging out with the most. And funny enough, a lot of them I wound up living with in that condemned house in East Hollywood. But by the end of it, the literal entire program had come out to watch me tell jokes on the beach. And everybody afterwards was like, that was great, man. It's very cool. And then I was like, oh, I should keep doing this. And then that was like that was the moment where I was like, oh, I can do something with this.
So for you, it was a positive experience, not like a negative experience to propel you.
Because I had negative experiences at open mics, but the first time I ever got on stage, I didn't bomb. Like, it wasn't a bad set. I did have plenty of bad sets after that. I think the third set I ever did was so bad. It still haunts me. But even this is the thing too, is like that drunk set that I was just talking about. I found a video of some of it that somebody had taken with their phone and posted on YouTube, and it's so bad. And I'm so shit-faced, and you can't understand me. And
Is your name in the...
I had them take it down.
God damn it. Oh.
Because my name was in it. Oh. And it was like J Light comedian, and I was like, please, I was like, listen, I hit this person up, and they're very nice, and they took it down, but I was like, listen, I've like got, this is right, I think right around the first season of Roast Battle, and I was like, I've got stuff going on now, and this video does not make me look good, and I would appreciate it if you took it down. And they're like, oh yeah, totally, I get it, 100%. But yeah, so it's like I have video of the second set I ever did that I just keep on my computer just occasionally as like a reminder of like, you used to be this bad once, so don't just be glad that you're not there ever again.
What are the chances of you showing us later?
Oh my God.
All right,
it doesn't have to be today, but
yeah,
next
eventually.
time I have video of my very first time, and I will show you that as tribute if you show me your second one. And no one's seen that. Yeah, no one's seen it but me. So
really?
Me and the person I went with. No one's ever seen that.
Where was the first place you ever performed?
San Jose. Well, perform. I would say I went to an open mic to do comedy. It was in San Jose at this burrito shop called Iguanas.
Okay.
And they have the Burritozilla. It was on the Food Network, but they had a little side like banquet room that they were just every Thursday. They were like, yeah, if you got a talent, come do it.
Okay. Yeah, we had that. This video I have is of a pizza shop in Grapevine, Texas called Zoo Roma, and they had a talent show open mic where. The second time I ever performed, I went and I had it wasn't a bad set, but
mine was.
I watch back now and I'm like, oh, you're such a bad performer though. And there was also, I don't even know if he's still performing, but it was me and one other friend of mine who doesn't do stand up anymore, and then this other dude who was a comic who's doing, working in Dallas. His name was Kasambwe. I think he was a Nigerian immigrant, and he was so fucking funny. He was great. And he just like blew the roof off of both of our performances, and we were just like, oh, we could be like this guy. This is great. And then of course the next time we went, we both bombed super hard. Me and my old friend.
The comedy gods always know when you're feeling good, and they're like, hey, you need one of these.
I'm gonna tap you out.
I have a twofer question.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What do you think is the most common misconception about the process of becoming a stand-up comedian? And if you could stand on a stage and everyone in the world, I don't know, this is hypothetical, everyone in the world could understand you, and you have 5 minutes to explain something to them about stand-up comedy that you just want the average person to understand, what would it be?
All right. So I think the thing that I would want to explain most is that there is this, we were just talking about this before the recording started a little bit, so this is very apt. I don't think that you have to be a
broken person
in order to do stand-up or pursue an artistic career.
Yeah.
I think
Aaron just wants you to validate his brokenness.
It didn't work. Okay. It didn't work.
No, I mean, you can do it, but you're going to be better if you're trying at the very least to become
a better person.
Well, not necessarily even a better person, just a more fulfilled person, and more comfortable in who you are and the way and what you're bringing to a stage. I think that when things started really clicking for me as a comic, it was as a direct result of doing Roast Battle and finding a voice of like, oh, these are the kind of things that I think are funny anyway, is these like weird, dark kinds of jokes. And I never, until doing Roast Battle, thought that I could tell jokes like that. I just would watch, like, I grew up watching a lot of very late night, like Insomniac with Dave Attell, and a lot of Adult Swim shows like Aqua Teen and Tim and Eric.
So silly.
Awesome show. And not in silly, but dark and silly. Mm-hmm. So like super kind of fucked up. Like one of my favorite shows of all time is the show called Wonder Chosen. Have y'all ever watched that? Oh, it's so great. Wonder Chosen is basically sketch comedy that is an episode of Sesame Street in hell. It's very, very good and very dark. They have episodes where they like kill and eat God. They have episodes about abortions, and like they do the songs about letters and stuff. But there's one that's like the letter N goes and gets an abortion in the pilot. There's all sorts of great stuff in Wonder Chosen, but it's very dark and very silly at the same time. So I watched all that stuff growing up, and I was never thinking that I could tell jokes like that. And so when I discovered that I could, then it opened up this whole world for me of like, oh, well, I can do this. But the other thing that I got worried about is I was starting to get sober around the same time. And so one of the things, it never crossed my mind. I know a lot of people who get sober, if they're comics, they get worried about like if they aren't putting stuff into their body, is that going to make them less funny? Do the drugs or the drinks, does that affect them? I just think everybody's wired differently. I think some people can pull it off, and I'm not one of those people. But I do think that in the process of like me coming to terms with that, I discovered a level of comfort in who I am and the kinds of things that I feel comfortable talking about, and the kinds of stuff that I don't feel like I can pull off talking about. That like my own line for material adjusted, and as a result of that, I became a better comedian because I'm like, this is who I am. This is the kind of stuff that I can pull off talking about and feel like I'm like a good comic. Like I'm like, this is what I can talk about to like wrap the audience in and then pull the trick on them, and then they are like, oh, we didn't see that coming.
Right.
So so you feel like you don't need to be a broken person, but you need to find fulfillment to become better.
I think that identifying as a broken person is only doing yourself a disservice as an artist. I think that you can find a much better way artistically to approach developing material and performing than just being like, oh, well, I'm just this broken fuck up person. I think you can do better.
Oh,
I'm
gonna cry.
I'll give you a hug. That's what
thanks,
we're here
bud.
for.
It's an intervention.
No, right. This was a trick. Good job, George. No, it's funny. I agree with what you're saying, and I think that I was doing when I first started. I was doing that. Yeah. Hey, everybody, I'm broken.
Right.
Now I would describe my material as a broken person trying to fix themselves on stage.
That's good. That's progress. It is.
You're like a therapist. You're getting there, bud. You're getting there. No, it's but I know exactly the fulfillment is important.
Right.
But where do you think that whole idea of a broken person comes from for being a comic?
I think a lot of it comes from the fact that there's this whole stereotype that comics, especially new comics, use the stage as therapy. And I actually saw a great tweet about this. I believe Rachel Friedland tweeted this, so shout out to Rachel. And if I got that wrong, I'm sorry, Rachel. But she said, when I see a comic who says that they use the stage as therapy, I think, oh, just premises then? Great. Because there's a point where like you can be saying stuff that you feel because you're like, oh, I'm a broken person, so I'm going to talk about my brokenness. But you might not have the actual jokes to back it up. You're just going to talk about it and then maybe think like, oh, I can do this, and this is going to make people laugh because they will identify with this. there's a difference that when you are able to like look at the things that have caused you to be broken, quote unquote, in a way where you're actually a self-aware analysis of those things.
Yeah.
So like for me, one of my when I was very early in sobriety, and then also even before then, I was single, and I had gone through this really fucking gnarly breakup, and I was talking a lot about like being single and going through this terrible breakup on stage. And then when I first got sober, I was talking about like being an alcoholic in recovery on stage, and I would get a lot of aw from the audience, and they're feeling pity for me or sympathy for me, and I don't want that. I very much do not want that, because that's not a laugh, okay? Like even when you're first starting out and you like tell a joke that is a super groaner because you don't know that shocking people is different from making them laugh. That is at least a response where I'm like, okay, we're getting somewhere with this. And awe feels like I'm getting nothing. It feels like it's an indictment of my own ability to try and like make you laugh, because I think it's funny. So why don't you think it's funny? So then, once I started to figure out the ways to talk about those things, the things that made me feel broken and made me feel uncomfortable, the ways that when I started to talk about that stuff in a way where I was letting people in on the joke instead of just like relaying my horrible existence to these people, then people could laugh at it. So like one of my favorite bits that I have finally recorded on my album that'll be coming out, and it should be out by the time this the show I'm doing Ontario Hub goes down.
Dope.
But it's a bit about Four Loko, and it's like a 4-minute long bit about Four Loko, but it also weaves in stuff that I used to do when I was like a crazy drunk. And that's the kind of stuff that I wished that I could talk about before, but I had no way of talking about it without trying to get people to feel bad for me. I just wanted you to laugh at me. I just wanted you to, I think that there's an easy thing for comics to do is to talk about our pain, right? But the tricky thing to do is to talk about our pain in a way that feels relatable and gets the audience to laugh. For me, what I had to do is package all of that in a bunch of silly riffs about like Four Loko and other dumb shit that I did when I was drunk. But I got there, and I'm glad that I got there. So it's just about whatever's the way of doing that for you and the kinds of stuff you're talking about.
So, I'm excited.
What's the title of your album?
It's called Good Guy with a Gun.
Good Guy with a Gun. It's gonna be on iTunes?
It will be.
Dope.
It'll iTunes, Spotify, the whole shebang. I just got the final cut of it this last week. I'm waiting to get the full mix down, and then should be released. We're looking at probably early to mid-February.
Dope.
So, and that'll be on all of my social media stuff at DIJ. You know,
Perfect.
I'm sure we'll figure that out later.
Perfect.
Oh, I can't wait to see it. Is it video and audio, or just
audio?
Okay.
Just audio.
Video and audio.
But it's a very cool audio. I had Coach T from Roast Battle do the production on it.
Nice.
So
Nice.
there's a lot of cool
speaking
stuff
of
in
Roast
there.
Battle, that was when I mentioned you kind of like popping back up into my like just orbit, I guess, as a comment. That was another one, like another highlight where like I saw your name attached to Roast Battle. I was like, oh shit, like I know that name. That's fucking cool. Like, was that a big moment for you? Like you?
Oh yeah, that was
like,
a huge moment.
What's that like? Like, what was that whole experience like? Because I'm sure like there was an idea that you had going in, and then doing it, and then realizing, oh, there's so much that I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
So my story with Roast Battle is I was in the right place at the right time for a lot of that show, but I also was willing to put in a lot of work to help the show grow. I got into Roast Battle before TV was even like a whisper in its brain or whatever the fucking expression is. I don't even know.
You got it on like ground floor.
Yeah.
That's dope.
I was there like 6 months after the show started, and I was taking video, and then I eventually started battling, and then Comedy Central came sniffing around, and I got put on the first couple seasons of the show. When I got those calls, that was some of the most validating things comedically that I've ever to this day still had, because that was also finally getting to the point where one of the things that really bugged me for a long time was that my family and I have always had a disconnect about comedy as a career. and we don't see eye to eye on things.
Still?
Not so much now.
Oh.
I think personally we don't see eye to eye on a lot of things, but they at least can accept and respect and recognize that comedy is my career. And that they can take a hold on, like, oh, he's making money doing this thing. Even if we don't like it, then there's something that people can appreciate about what he's doing. And I'd say this to them constantly. If I have a bit or something that they don't like, I understand, and I'll say, listen, I'm sorry that I offended you, but also keep in mind I don't do comedy for you, and I'm not keeping you in mind when I'm doing something on stage or writing something. So just know that, like, this is not about you, so don't make it about you, please. But when I first started working at the Comedy Store, that was a moment where they were like, oh, we've heard of the Comedy Store. We know it, that we've been there before. Oh, that's cool. You're, like, doing this thing. And also it was easy for them to pick up on that because I was like, oh, this is like grad school. And they're like, he's in school again. Great. He's not throwing his life away. But the Comedy Central stuff, for Roast Battle specifically, that was a moment where they were like, oh, we get it now. Okay, cool. They came to those tapings in Austin for the first season. It was a great time. We all sort of finally were like, yeah, this is it. This is a thing. And then being asked to do the second season was even cooler because that battle that I had with Frank Castillo was so much fun, and
it looked like you guys had a blast.
It was a great time. Frank and I battled a couple times.
Yeah.
You know, we'd done that show plenty of times against each other. And it was really nice because originally we weren't supposed to go first that night. We got taped and we were supposed to go, I think, like third in the order. They moved us to go first. And what Frank and I did, and I'm still very proud of this, is I think we really set the pace for what that show was going to look like for the rest of the initial tournament. Because we're coming in with bangers. We're coming in with heat. We're going to show this crowd, like, oh, this isn't just like, just because you've never heard of us doesn't mean that we don't know how to write some really fucking good, mean roast jokes. So get ready. Yeah. And so that was a nice thing. And I still get a lot of compliments on that. That clip's still online. People still mention that to me. I did a gig last year. I did a college in Joplin, Missouri, and I met some like 20-year-old, 19-year-old kid, and he was like, "Yeah, man, I heard that you were coming here, and I remember watching your roast battle against Frank Castillo." And I was like, dope. This is gonna be cool. And I was like, this is cool that you saw that I like had an impact. It's very surreal still.
It's been fun to watch, like, just in general from like a distant perspective, because like I'll run into you at like a Danny Frank's show because you were doing his like his Long Beach Laugh-Ins.
Yep.
And it's cool like to watch you kind of blow up and kind of take flight or set sail, whatever you want to call it. And I feel like we're all back here just kind of like treading water, but like, all right, maybe we can reach him. Maybe he's just right there over the corner, because it's like you, I think for me personally, were one of the first like, oh, this is doable, like, because I watched you do it, kind of like not directly, but I watched you do it, and then I saw you in roast battle. I was like, what the fuck? That's cool. And then we're actually going to Worthington's tonight after this. That's why we wanted to do it early. But our second time there was when I saw you on TV.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's a weird. I was like, I'm pretty sure that's Jay Light. And I had to go look, and I went through your like Instagrams, like that was him. That's cool. Like you had a commercial, I think, is what I saw.
Was it the General commercial? Was
Maybe.
it riding a pig?
It was an insurance one, I think. Yeah.
I get texts about that a lot. I still have people. One time I had two friends, both with the same initials, text me the same thing. They're like, I'm watching this American Dad marathon on TBS, and I saw this. Literally same text from the two guys whose both initials were GD in my phone, and I was like, "This is crazy. It's still going on. It's wild."
That's cool. It was cool. It's I don't know. It's been fun to watch from a distance, just overall, and it's good to watch like craftsmen. I would consider you like a craftsman. You're meticulous. You have a craft. You take it seriously. You know, it's really easy to. Comedy is such a low entry barrier. It's really easy for someone to just come in and dick around for 10 years.
Yeah.
But like you're closing in on 10 years, and like you said, this is mid glow up for you right now. Mm-hmm. It's fucking crazy for you.
I feel like and I don't want to sound like I'm tooting my own horn or anything, but I feel like I have a high ceiling. And it's nice to know, and this is a thing I've really just started to accept in the past couple years is that I don't. The only person who's stopping me from doing anything is me at the end of the day. As long as, and I think this is largely for comics in general. If you are putting in work and actually give a shit about the work that you're doing instead of just kind of dicking around and fucking off with it, and you take the time to do things that you're proud of and make stuff that you feel good about, whether that's stand-up material or, you know, like writing scripts or pilots or sketches or whatever, and podcasting, look at what we're doing right now. If you're making stuff that you feel good about and you continue to do that, then that's good enough. And if you put together a good body of work, there is going to be a group of people who take notice of you. And it's not going to happen the way you think it's going to happen, but it's going to. But it's worth taking the gamble, and it's worth taking the shot. You know, like it's interesting to hear, like, from you guys' perspective. I've done stuff that is like cool, and like people recognize it as like, oh, this is this thing. He was on TV. He was on Comedy Central. There are days when I still sit here and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing with my life? Like, I don't have a job right now. I don't even know what to do with myself. I go watching friends get passed at the Comedy Store and like get on late night sets, and there just comes to a point where you're like, I don't need to run this like a competition. I'm not in competition with anybody. As long as I can put together stuff that I feel good about and work at the craft and not leave shit by the wayside, then I'm going to be fine. That, and I want to backtrack. If that's the thing that I can tell in comics and tell something 5 minutes in, that's the thing that everybody should focus on. Is like, care about what you're doing. Don't fuck around. Leave a little bit of room for like hanging out and shooting the shit with people and fun, but take it seriously. And taking it seriously is the thing that's going to get you further than anything else.
So in this podcast, this is my favorite question to ask.
Ask away.
Oh, good. To give some context, though, this was made specifically for the IE.
Okay.
So normally the question is, who in the Inland Empire do you feel is the most underrated, deserves a shout out, needs to be seen more? But considering the context and that we're in this hellhole that is Los Angeles, but
this is a great mansion, by the way.
It is very nice.
You,
I appreciate the tigers that was walking through.
It's nice to record out here on the veranda.
Yeah, appreciate.
I'll take the birds out in post.
But who's a comic in general that you feel doesn't get enough shine? Needs a shout out, and people need to see this person and why.
Okay, that's an interesting question.
Aaron just likes to start shit. So
man, this is really tough because there's people. It's interesting because there's people who I think are at all levels who still don't get enough shine sometimes. Like, I love Fahim Anwar. Fahim Anwar is one of these guys who still, amazingly enough, manages to feel like he's an under the radar performer, even though he has, late night sets and hour specials, and he's got all this cool stuff as far as like milestones in a career. But I still run into people who like don't know who Fahim is, which is crazy to me because I think Fahim is one of the most gifted performers and talent, and he's just such a fucking talented comedian. If I were to go with somebody more at like
our level,
yeah, I would say
we are not at J.
No, I said our level, not our level. I'm pointing. Nobody can see me pointing.
We're gesturing here.
I'm gesturing a lot. No, I mean like the buddy system level, like very, very low.
I really like people who I like. If I'm going, let's go off. People who I see like who are like getting a foothold on like what comedy is and getting the hang of it. I really like watching. There's this dude. He moved here from Boston. He's so funny, and I don't see him as much just because his work schedule means that he and I go to different mics now. He used to be a regular at my open mic on Thursdays. His name's Dan Donahue. He's so funny. He's got a great Twitter feed. His jokes are great. He's a really funny comic on stage. He talks about all this crazy shit. Him and I'm gonna say two. I'm gonna throw two guys out. One of them just got hired at the Comedy Store. This other guy is named Alex Hanna. Alex Hanna just got a door guy job. Another person who's like super funny, very silly. I've watched him grow from like funny but unconfident and sort of stiff to funny and very confident, but not in a way, but in a way where it feels kind of like on stage he's putting it on almost, not like Jeselnik dripping with it levels, but in a way where it's like, this guy is just such a fucking goofball. What is he doing up there? But it's so enjoyable, and he's so likable, and he's so funny. And I would think both of those guys have big things ahead of them. Nice. Dan Donahue, Alex Hanna.
Follow him on. You said he's got a Twitter feed.
They both have great Twitters. Yeah, Dan Donahue, and I think it's just at Dan Donahue and maybe at Alex Hanna. But I think Alex is like some weirdo shit. He used to be an East Side stand-up guy, so all the East Side comics all have some like weird Twitter handle. And I say that, I have my Twitter handle is at Diet J. My open mic that I run is at the East Side somewhere, in Hyperion Tavern. So who knows?
Yeah, you were mentioning milestones with those guys, and I like trekking back to the beginning. If you could send, 3 images of milestones in your comedic career to your 2 years in former self, be like, dude, you're not gonna believe what the fuck we just did. This is crazy. It's gonna look like I'm lying, but I'm not. Like, what's like 3, I guess, your milestones that you hit that you're like, dude, this is crazy.
Me on screen with a Comedy Central logo in the corner, like watching myself on television. Which also, by the way, fun fact, I didn't even bring this up. Fucking Hollywood's the greatest fucking place to like be knocked down a couple pegs. I was working at the store the night that my episode of Roast Battle aired, the very first one aired, and I watched it on the patio television on the front, and then later that night I had to clean up puke because somebody puked on a table in the OR. So Hollywood, baby, it's here for you. But that moment would be number 1. Let's go with that night in particular, because that's a fun thing to have for anybody. Is like, hey, you've got some cool stuff, but remember, you're still like ain't shit. You still have stuff to figure out. Being around the historical roast writers room and working in that capacity, getting to work with great comics and performers, getting to work alongside Jeff Ross and hang out with him and write some of my favorite jokes that like somehow made it to air. Like if I could recapture the feeling of watching Gilbert Gottfried do a joke as Hitler on historical roasts that we basically like slipped into the script last minute and did not even fully write out. We just had to whisper it to him and hope that he got it right because we were afraid they would cut the joke if they saw it in the script. And see him do it and pull it off and get a big laugh. I was like, this is so great. This is the life right here.
What's your favorite and least favorite part about being a comic?
My favorite part about being a comic is it's hanging out with people. I really, of course, I love being on stage, but I found, especially lately, is that like if I don't have a sense of camaraderie and I don't feel like I'm hanging out with people, and other comics are the best people in the world to hang out with, anytime I'm at a situation where like I have to hang out with people who are not comics, it's fucking excruciating. And I really value and cherish like what hanging out with other comics is like, and they hang at a show or a mic or afterwards if we like go to get food or something. That I love so much. That's my favorite part about stand-up. Least favorite part is when you bomb and you're like, all right, well, I have to do another spot. And if I'm doing a run of spots and bombing is the first thing that I do that night, I'm like, oh fuck, this is gonna be. Oh, I gotta run with a smile on my face and plaster it on the rest of the night and see what happens. But the not knowing what comes next, that is the craziest part. And there's a lot of waiting around and not knowing in stand-up, but there's never a more like granulated moment of it than when you bomb and you're like, fuck, I have to go somewhere else and perform again. Oh,
gotta do this same set.
Yeah. Oh, is this gonna go as bad as it did just now? I hope not. And then it might. And you're like, oh, fuck, okay, well.
You ever have those sets where you're like, you do the same set and it does 300% times better, and you're like, I did nothing different. I did nothing. What is going on?
Oh, yeah. Plenty of times. I've had sets that are like inexplicably bad, inexplicably good. There's times when I've dug myself into a hole after thinking that like the joke I'm doing is totally going to work. and then something happens, and I say something that like pisses the crowd off, or whatever. I'm like, oh fucking, I got to dig out of this hole. That happened last night. I was doing the Laugh Local show. I had spent this whole night. There's this chick in the crowd who is super wasted, and I was making jokes about her just being like a racist, dumb white chick. And at one point, she said, "I can't breathe." And I said, that's something that a black guy used to say, right? And people, because I'd been, but that's the thing. I'd been playing, the whole 15 minutes up until this point. I was like, I'm painting her as a racist white lady. And that was the point where I was like, the crowd clenched up, and I was like, oh, fuck, I had that working so much better in my head than it did coming out on stage.
Was the crowd predominantly white?
Yeah, but there were some black people in the crowd.
Were the black people okay with the joke?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
It didn't seem like anybody was okay with it.
Really?
And then I had to spend the whole rest of I got the light like right after I did that, and then I was like, fuck, I have 5 minutes left to like win you guys back over. And I did, but it was just like, I don't want to have to deal with any of that after I thought we're all having fun, we're all joking around. This is what we've set up to be the whole rest of the show. Come on, guys, just be with me here. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah, those Laugh Local shows are fun. They took a break for a little while, but they were essentially doing kind of what the Buddy System was doing before us. Like they were the only like people putting on mics and shows in the Inland Empire for a very long time. Like I love like Cat Morales and
Cat's
all those
great.
guys.
And James, all those guys were great.
Yeah, they're so nice, and they booked me when I had no business asking for spots, and it's. I'm so grateful for them because it's because of like those rooms and then doing it upstairs in the Falconer and stuff that helped me grow as a comic because up until that point I was doing 2-3 minute sets a night, and it's I don't know, the grind was different then than it is now because like now there is so much more opportunity out in the Inland Empire, but I owe them so much, I guess, is my point.
They're great. They provided a great service. They gave me a lot of really good fun long sets when I was still getting a foothold and figuring out how to do longer sets. Sets are like 10, 15, 20 minutes. They've let me headline probably more than a lot of shows in the area have, which is cool. So, yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of like when you're getting started in a scene and like you're figuring out, rooms like that are so valuable. And so I'm very glad that they're back in action again, too.
Yeah, same. What's your grind like now, though? Like now that you're basically, full-time artist, right? That's kind of what you're doing. How often do you hit mics? I know you said you run one
every
Thursdays.
Thursday, yeah. I'm still there a lot. There are occasionally times when like I'll go just to set up and do the draw, and then I have to leave, or sometimes I'll come late or whatever. I focus at this point more on the amount of times I can get up on stage during a week. I feel like a good sweet spot for me is 8 to 10 times a week between shows, mics, whatever. I don't do as many open mics as I used to. I don't have to, which is very nice. I've been able to get a lot more consistent bookings. I still do them if I need to. I really don't feel as good about myself as a performer if I'm not hitting that even just like 7 a week. If I don't feel like I have gotten up at least once a day, even if it's not technically once a day, but if I don't hit that minimum of like 7 spots, then something has gone wrong. I also try to listen back to my sets as regularly as I can. Sometimes I go through a period of time where I don't listen to them and they build up, and then I actually just went through a phase of this where I spent the first 2 weeks of this year whittling down this giant backlog of like 50 some odd sets that I had built up over the course of since last September that I just hadn't listened to. They were just sitting on my phone. And not short sets either, like some 15, 20, 30 minutes, a couple headlining sets, like 40, 50-minute sets on there. And I whittled it down. I still have a couple that I have to get through.
Jesus.
But I focused so much on like, I need to get this done. I can take a couple nights off from doing mics or trying to get booked on shows so I can listen back to these performances and really like distill it down into stuff that I'm going to feel good about performing for the rest of the year. So I think, there's places that I like to perform. There's a lot of this whole paid mic bullshit that's really close to me, and I live right next to it on Melrose. You're looking very confused.
Yeah,
Aaron.
what the fuck is a paid mic?
It's you pay 5 minutes.
They're like slotted mics.
Yeah. 5 spots for 5 minutes.
I'm sorry.
mics.
In my head, I was like, they give you money for doing open mic.
No.
Sorry, it made no fucking sense to me.
And this is you know, they're kind of a necessary evil, I guess. I think that, listen, there are places where you're going to be paying for stage time no matter what, but I would much rather do it at a place where I am supporting a venue by buying a coffee or a drink or like a food item or something than me helping pay your rent for leasing a shop on Melrose.
Right.
So I don't do as many of those as I used to. I still do them if I need to, but I try and focus on doing mics that are free or mics where it's like I'm supporting a venue specifically, and I do as many shows as I can. I've been traveling a lot more outside of LA to do shows. I love shows in the IE and in Orange County. There's a lot of great stage time out there. But the main core of the grind is I have to do like 8 to 10 spots a week. That's how I feel sharpest. That's how I feel most on my game. Occasionally take a night or two off to sort of reset and not really worry about the stuff so much. And that, I think, is the most important thing, though. Is like, I got to hit this number so I stay sharp and constantly tweak and develop the stuff as I go along.
Right. So I feel lazy as fuck now. So
What do you do?
I mean, we just do our shows, you know, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Now we just put on mics, and that's when
That's
I go
4.
up. I mean,
That's good. That's something.
yeah, it's not 8.
I mean, hey,
it's
listen.
not
it
your
took-
bare minimum.
It took me a while to get to that bare minimum, though. You know, I always like you guys know Mark Normand, I would assume. Mark Normand is like, I would love to be going up as much as Mark Normand. Mark Normand can do like 15 spots in a night. I love that. That's why I think I would love to be in New York ultimately instead of just LA. I would love to do the bi-coastal thing or be full-time New York because you can get up so much over there.
Yeah. Who was it? Ren maybe I was
Spitzer.
talking to. She's moved that direction, was telling us how everything's just so much closer. Like, just because like we're in California, we're such a car culture, we drive to everything, but out there it's like you got to walk around the corner and then hit your next spot and then you know, call ahead for your next spot. So but that's cool. That's dope. That's the artist life, right? I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, pretty much. You feel much more like you're in it when you're running around doing stuff like that.
I have a question.
Ask.
All right.
Don't you raise your hand next
It's very
time.
very
Jesus, fuck.
efficient. All right. If a comic, you didn't know this comic, and you're chatting with them, and they said, "Yeah, you know, I don't write. I don't need to write." Ooh, good. I like the disdain on your body language. Now, what do you say to that?
Is this another trick? Is Aaron tricking me into
You never know.
something else?
I can tell you. I can tell you why I'm asking, but I kind of do want to just hear your response to it. So I'm a comic, and I say, yeah, you know, I don't write. I just sort of riff, and that's how I make my material. I don't need to write. I'm Biggie Smalls.
I mean, I have questions. I have follow-up questions.
Okay.
The most important one is, how long have you been doing it for?
I've been doing it consistently for about 3 years.
Okay. I mean, there's going to be a point when you're going to need to write. I feel like there's stuff that you do when you're early on in an artistic pursuit that you can't fathom ever having to change, and there's going to be a point when you're going to have to change that thing. And so I will just file it away in my mind. I'll file away the disdained pose, and I'll just be like, I'll make that in my head, but outside I'll be like, oh, cool, good for you. And then I'll watch them on stage, and I will be very fascinated to see what they do. And then I'll just try and move on.
Okay.
I don't think, unless they're sitting there asking me, like, what do you think about my set, or what do you think about the way I did? I'm not going to just, like, offer up an opinion.
Right.
I would much rather watch you do your thing and be like, okay. All right.
Okay.
There's that.
At the end of this, when we're not recording, I'll explain why I asked
Ooh,
that.
spicy. Some spicy off
Share
air
it.
No,
talk.
honestly, it's not even spicy. It's just that I've said it so many times on this podcast that I'm tired of repeating myself, and I'm sure people who are listening already know what I'm talking about. So,
I think when people say that they don't write or like I said, what I like about you is you seem like a craftsman. You take it seriously. You sit down. You do the work that needs to be done. You identify your weaknesses, and you kind of lean into those and just get better. And that's what I respect. But when someone's like, I don't write, it's like, well, that's the bare minimum. If you're not willing to sit down and put the time that you want this to be your career, and why are you going to ask anyone else in the world to sit down and put their time into your career?
And this is the other thing to keep in mind too, is like, even if somebody's saying like, oh, I don't write, but they do the same bits, that's still writing. Just because you're not like taking a pen to a paper doesn't mean that you can just get away with saying, oh, I don't write. No, you've written. You just don't have it on paper anywhere. That's what I think. I love some of my favorite comics to watch. Great crowd work comedians, guys like Rick Ingraham, Big J. Okerson, because they'll do crowd work and they'll develop bits that are crowd work centric bits, where like you're asking a series of questions, then you basically branch off and doing like a choose your own adventure, but there's still bits. It's not like, to somebody who's seen them a bunch, oh, they're asking where they're from. Okay, they're getting ready to talk about, maybe they're going to do their Canada chunk, maybe they're going to do their Australia chunk, maybe they're going to do this other stuff. So it's still writing, even if you're not sitting down like, oh, I'm gonna write down this specific word, this and these specific things that I have to say. It's still writing. So if you're saying that, person who very well may be listening to this podcast, get off your fucking high horse. You're writing.
I like the idea. I've never thought about it that way. It's a choose your own adventure when you're doing like a crowd work centric set. Like that's a really good way to put it, because you got 3 options now. You answered this, and this. And
one of the best pieces of advice I ever got about doing crowd work is always do crowd work that is leading into something. Don't ever do stuff that doesn't have the potential to go somewhere where the ending. Always know where it can wind up.
Yeah. Solid advice from J-Light. We got to start wrapping this up because we got to get going and go bum it in the middle of nowhere. You got one more question, Aaron Chase. I know they're in there, so.
Shit. All right, I want to make it good, but I want it to be a positive. You've inspired me to try not to be a negative piece of shit on this, but no, genuinely though, I'm glad we got to do this, because getting to know where you started and where you've ended so far. I don't want to let you die today. I don't know.
Who knows? I was planning on jumping off my fucking balcony, but it's gloomy. It's a perfect day for it.
You should wait till they're done with the 10th bedroom right now.
Yeah.
Wait till Javier leaves.
All right.
Then jump off of that.
But the place that you've gotten in your life is truly, genuinely inspiring to me. Like, this is what you're doing is what I want to eventually get to.
Thanks.
And so I wonder if, for a comic who might be listening, who's newer to this, who's feeling like this is fucking impossible, what would you say?
Basically, what are you telling future?
Yeah, just tell me. just help. Just help me.
Man, I think.
I'm asking for a friend, by the way. This has nothing to do with
I'm holding that for a friend.
To not repeat myself so much, I think that if you care about developing as an artist, then you're going to do stuff that will inevitably allow you to create better things. You'll have a better idea of what works for you, what doesn't work for you, what you can talk about, what you don't feel comfortable talking about, what you feel comfortable addressing at all. And I think the closer you get to figuring out what works for you and developing a set of material around that, and also within that context, not just artistically, figuring out the kinds of people that you work well with and the kinds of people that you feel good about hanging out with. Once you get your life in a more noticeable order and you feel a little bit more fulfilled, then good stuff will come around that. If you want this,
he's gesturing to the lion right now.
I'm gesturing. Yes, if you want,
and
if
his
you
rows
want
of help.
This whole, if you want this whole setup I got going on here, if you want this, the favorite setup, if you want this, the Crown on Netflix setup that I have, you can do it too. This now I sound like I'm fucking Tony Robbins. If you want, you can get this, but you just have to be willing to accept things about yourself and figure out how to turn them into gold. You can take your flaws and oh man, okay. This is going to be a dumb, beautiful metaphor. Have you guys ever heard of? I think it's called kintsugi.
No.
You guys ever heard of this? All right. So it's this Japanese crafting method for ceramics, where they take broken pottery and they reform it, and they use, I think, gold leaf to fill in the cracks. So now you have this beautiful work of art where it's like it used to be this shattered pot, but now it's got this beautiful gold inlay where all the cracks used to be. If you can take the things that make you feel broken and turn them into like a beautiful work of art, like a piece of kintsugi, then the good stuff will come from that. Once I started figuring out the things that worked for me and the kinds of stuff that I was capable of creating and the things I was good at creating, then all of the rest of this stuff started to fall into place. So don't settle for like, I'm just going to be this person who's going to like fuck around and I'm comfortable at the level where I'm at now. Lean into the discomfort and allow the discomfort to turn you into a better artist and a more capable person of living the dreams that you want fulfilled.
So you're fucked, Aaron.
Yeah, no,
there's
no way.
You're not succeeding.
I'm gonna die lonely in a dumpster, but it'll be outside of his mansion. So
that's
it's
great
fine.
advice.
See, I got a good
No,
dumpster.
no, man. I think that's great advice, and it makes me excited specifically to see you at the Ontario Improv on March 3rd at the Buddy System Show at 8 o'clock.
I'm very excited for that.
What else are you doing up until then? Where else can they catch you? Where are you at? What's your Instagram? What's your Pornhub? I don't know what you have.
Can find me at DietJ on Twitter and Instagram, and all of my show dates are at jlightcomedy.com. Mostly local stuff for the next couple months, just because I have a writing job coming up in February that's going to keep me in town. But all the dates that I have are on there on my calendar.
jlightcomedy.com.
Yeah.
Diet J.
Yep.
That's dope.
And the album coming out, Good Guy with a Gun.
Yes.
All my socials will have that too. So follow those for updates.
Good Guy with a Gun. Any chance you're selling hard copies at the Ontario Improv?
I will.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Dope. I think I want one.
It's gonna be good. I'm very excited for it.
Cool beans. Well, thank you for doing this, Mr. J Light. Thanks for sitting down with us and inviting us on. I guess you got to walk us back up to the helicopter. So
of course, yeah. I've got Guillermo readying the helipad.
Guillermo.
Dude, if Bill Burr got to fly, oh my God, sorry. Anyway, I just went into a whole fantasy in my head. All right,
everyone say bye.
Bye.